Hey guys, welcome back to another video. This is sort of a part 2, I guess, to my June Blu-ray update, DVD update for June 2012. I've just got 10 here, 6 Blu-rays and 2 DVDs. Now the 2 DVDs have actually been in my collection for a while, but I might talk about them anyway, because I've just sort of rewatched them recently. And pretty much all these, I think there's 10 here, something 10, 9, probably actually 9. Are all black and white movies. So I think the 7 Blu-rays I sort of bought as like a sort of a bulk deal off a guy off eBay for real cheap. I think they're all about, I think I worked out it's going to be like $6.50 for each of them. So I thought it was a bit of a bargain. So it's pretty much going to be classic black and white movies I'm going to be talking about today. First one's probably don't need to talk about too much. Got Psycho, the 50th anniversary, with a bit of a slip cover there. Haven't sort of seen this one for a few years. I really sort of wanted to watch this one before I made the update, but I didn't sort of get a chance to do it. But I have sort of watched the rest of these ones, so I'll have to watch this one soon though. Yeah, but I don't need to talk about this one too much. Sort of a lot of people who know that one, so I might skip ahead with that one. Okay, first one I've got is one called Brief Encounter, which I've never sort of seen before. I think 1941, I think it came out. I think it was the early 1940s anyway. Yeah, definitely a good one. It's got, I think it's a David Lean film, and I think he was very good. He made a lot of the popular sort of black and white movies, sort of the 40s and 50s. Essentially, this one's about, essentially about sort of essentially it's about a married couple, but unfortunately they're sort of married to other people. They're sort of just like a chance sort of meeting basically, and they just sort of meet each other at like a train station, and they sort of, over time they sort of start to meet each other, because I think they go sort of into town every Thursday or something, and they sort of start to talk, and then it sort of builds into like a relationship, and they sort of fall in love with each other basically, and it's just essentially about that really. I won't sort of spoil the end for you. First, just sort of simple, and just sort of about emotions, and sort of dealing with the themes of sort of being married, just married. They're both married, and they're sort of torn between being married and sort of having this affair, which is probably for 1940s it would have been you don't sort of do stuff like that, do you? So it's sort of film you could probably make today, I guess. Nothing's really changed, sort of thing. But it's also it's just about them necessarily. It's also sort of other relationships too. Like you sort of got the woman that runs sort of the cafe, and she's there's sort of this guy sort of really likes her, and he sort of comes in every day, and they sort of have this big conversations, and she sort of she wants to sort of fight him off a bit, but I think she really likes him, sort of thing, sort of thing. And then you sort of got like a young couple doing the same sort of thing. You're sort of starting this new relationship type thing. And but yeah, definitely a really good movie. I think. Cydia Johnson, I think she didn't sort of make a whole lot of movies, but she's more of a sort of theatre type performer, but I think she was very sort of popular, and everyone seemed to like in all the films that she did sort of make, and I think she did sort of die very young, I think, as well. But I think sort of the main two guys, I think they were both very sort of unknown. So at the time, I think they sort of, it's kind of a sort of a start off point for them, and they did sort of got a lot more work, I suppose, and a lot more popular over time. So that's Brief Encounter. Next one's probably a very famous book, based on a very famous book by Charles Dickens, probably his most famous one, probably Great Expectations. Now I've never actually sort of read the book. I think I've only sort of seen bits and pieces of this movie, I think a long time ago, and so I did sort of know what the twist was. It's a bit of a sort of a twist at the end, sort of thing, or towards the end, and I sort of knew what that was already, and I do sort of remember, some of the scenes in it as well. Essentially, I think I probably don't need to get too much detail, but essentially it's about Pip, the main character, and he's like I think he's from a very sort of poor family, and I think his uncle's like a blacksmith, and he sort of he starts off to be like an apprentice sort of blacksmith, and he's very sort of poor family, and one day this rich man from the city comes in and sort of says, well, I want to take you away. There's a man that wants to sort of basically sort of fund you to be a gentleman sort of thing. You know, he's going to sort of pay for everything, you know, your clothes and your food, and put you up, and you know, sort of teach you how to be a gentleman sort of thing. And so Pip doesn't necessarily know who this guy is, and you know, he's been told that one day, you know, the benefactor's going to come to him one day and tell him who he is, sort of thing. And you've also got the very sort of eccentric sort of old woman that sort of lives in this big old place by herself, and she's sort of very sad character, and sort of just stays inside all day, sort of because at one time she was going to be married, you know, to this very rich man, and for some reason he sort of just at the last minute sort of left her, and so that totally just sort of shattered her basically. And but she's sort of in his house with all the, you know, still got the wedding presents on the table, and still got the half-eaten cake on the table, and she stopped all the clocks, and just totally just sort of stuck sort of in that, I don't know, sort of perhaps in that sort of time frame, I guess. She sort of, you know, sort of hates men and stuff. But anyway, Pip, he used to sort of play in her yard when he was young, sort of thing. And so there's big sort of, you know, that's the other sort of part of the story, I guess. I've sort of read I've never read the book, but I've heard the book has a lot more character development, obviously a lot more character development in it, and a lot more things sort of happen, and different things happen compared to the movie. But I quite enjoyed the movie though. I thought it was pretty good. Probably one of the most sort of famous movies of all time. I got Casablanca with Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman. Probably I think my friend said it was one of the best movie of all time ever made, sort of thing. You know. I think there's a few films like that though, which yeah, I was probably don't mention this one too much, I suppose. But that was a pretty good film. I think I've seen it once or twice before. Essentially, I probably don't go into too much detail about this one, but essentially, yeah, like Humphrey Bogart, he owns like I'm not sure, it's like a nightclub, or they call it like a gin joint sort of thing in Casablanca, and he's originally from America, and he got exiled, I think, from America for some reason. I think something to do with the war anyway. So he's there, and then obviously one of his sort of, I don't know, I want to say ex-girlfriend, but that's probably not the best way to describe it. Ex-lover, I suppose. You know, comes back into his life, and you know, things have to change, and it was a very sort of political type movie as well, and just, yes, you know, it's lots of great lines in it, and you know, the "Play it again, Sam" is probably one of the most famous lines from the movie, but that line never actually appears in the movie, which is sort of not quite sure why people think that's in it, but anyway. Oh, oops. Next one I got another Humphrey Bogart movie. The Treasure of, what's it called? Treasure of Sierra hang on. The Treasure of Sierra Madre. Another good movie. I've never even heard of this one before, but I actually quite enjoyed this one. Essentially, it's about sort of three guys that sort of down the luck, and you know, basically sort of hobos, I suppose, just sort of living, you know, doing odd jobs for people and just scraping by, but just getting enough money. So they sort of decide as a group they're going to go into the Mexico mountains and sort of try to mine for gold, sort of thing. So they, you know, trek up there and sort of work for months and months on end, and you know, in this, you know, boiling hot sun, and just, you know, working their asses off trying to find gold. And you know, it it starts out, you know, they're you know, kind of friends with each other, and obviously they're going to share everything together. But of course, over time, they once they start to, you know, mine the gold, and they start to sort of turn on each other a little bit, and just, yeah, very very good movie to watch. Very sort of gritty, I suppose. I didn't suppose to like the end much. I thought it was a bit. I was sort of hoping for it. I thought it was going to sort of end a certain way, and like nothing wrong with the end, I suppose. It's just that I sort of was hoping it was going to end this way, but it sort of, yeah, went another way, sort of thing. But that's, you know, I guess. It's still a good movie though. If you're probably a Humphrey Bogart fan. Next one I got is Some Like It Hot, which is another black and white. I thought it was actually going to be in colour, this one, but it's actually black and white. Marilyn Monroe, Tony Curtis, Jack Lemmon. Essentially, it's about sort of two two guys, like I think one's a bass player and one's a saxophone player, and they sort of witness a murder done by the mob. So the mob sort of is after them. They're trying to, you know, obviously they can't have witnesses, so they're trying to kill them off. So they decide to sort of, you know, skip town, and so they get this sort of idea of sort of dressing up as women and, you know, sort of joining this sort of touring, you know, all-female band, so, you know, to try and get away from the mob. And just, yeah, a bit of a comedy, I suppose. Well, I actually enjoyed this a lot more than I thought it was going to. I thought it was going to be typical sort of cliche type movie, but it's actually had a few sort of twists and turns that I wasn't quite expecting. But yeah, I thought it was a pretty good movie. I did hear that Marilyn Monroe was a bit difficult to work with. Apparently, I think she was sort of had a few sort of mental problems, I think, at the time, and she was pregnant at the time, and I think she ended up having a miscarriage, I think, after as well, just after the film had been made, but she definitely wasn't sort of concentrating on the movie. I don't think I think she had problems sort of trying to deliver her lines, and had to make so many takes and, you know, sort of thing. So, but yeah, I thought it was definitely a good movie. You know, watch that. Okay, last Blu-ray, one called Limelight, with Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton, which they said it's like their very first time together in a film, but I don't think that's actually quite true though. But essentially, this one's about, it's kind of supposed to be like Charlie Chaplin's sort of last film, I suppose. Even though it wasn't technically his last film, but this definitely would be his last film, because I think it's essentially very much about him. I think so essentially about sort of like Charlie Chaplin. He's playing like a sort of a comedian, like he's sort of an old comedian. He's very sort of popular in his youth, but now he's sort of outdated. No one sort of wants to see him anymore. So I think he's not necessarily very funny anymore. And he ends up sort of meeting this young girl that's sort of is a dancer, and she's sort of just perhaps kind of like starting her career, I suppose, where he's sort of ending his career, sort of thing. And she tries to sort of kill herself because she's a bit depressed, and so he comes along and sort of saves her, and then they sort of have this relationship together, and she sort of, you know, moves into his room, sort of thing, and, you know, and she sort of falls in love with him, and but yeah, I definitely thought it was a good film though. Definitely very sort of sad movie about sort of, you know, him sort of at his end of his life, and she's sort of starting off, you know, in a new life, sort of thing, and they're both sort of helping each other out type thing and stuff. But yeah, that's definitely a really good film. Yeah. Haven't sort of seen many of Charlie Chaplin's films, but the ones I have sort of seen, I think I've seen one or two other ones, and I think they're all pretty good. I think he's a very good sort of very visual type actor. So okay, the last two are just sort of two DVDs, two black and white movies that I've sort of watched and sort of had them in my collection for quite a while. I'm sort of rushing this a little bit because I think my battery's about to die, I think. Okay, so we've got the Man with the Golden Arm, with Frank Sinatra and Kim Novak. Essentially, it's about Frank Sinatra is like a drug addict, I suppose, and the film sort of starts with him sort of coming back to town. I think he was arrested probably 6 months ago and sort of sent to rehab, I suppose, and it's just, you know, sort of kicked the habit, and he sort of comes back, and he's very, you know, very enthusiastic about sort of quitting, and he's going to quit at this time, and because he sort of, you know, meets his old friends, and he sort of, you know, slowly gets back into, you know, he can't find a job, so he gets depressed, and he's, you know, so he sort of gets, actually starts to use sort of drugs again and stuff. It's just about that, really. But he's got a wife, and they were both in a car accident, I don't know when, and she lost the use of her legs, and so he's sort of there, sort of, you know, has to sort of, you know, take care of her and look after her and stuff, because she can't walk, obviously, and but he's also got like a mistress as well, which he's sort of seeing, and sort of get the impression that, you know, if his wife wasn't in a wheelchair, then he would, you know, go off with his mistress, sort of thing, and leave his wife type thing. And it's just sort of great because they're sort of both sort of female leads. His wife saying, you know, one wants him to sort of go back to being a card dealer in like an illegal card game. So that's what he was good at, and where he wants he wants to sort of make a change and become a drummer in a band. So his mistress is sort of trying to, you know, convince him to, you know, to join the band and follow his dream, where his wife's sort of stuck in the past and wants him to sort of go back to his old way of life. The sort of, you know, so you're sort of being pulled, sort of being pulled in two directions type thing. But that's definitely a really good movie. Definitely a good film that someone read on the forum. Someone reckons they couldn't sort of make this film today. It would be, the whole thing's very sort of outdated. But I've definitely, I think that's true at all. I definitely think you could probably make a film with exactly the same sort of themes. I mean, I've known people that are, you know, drug addicts and like this, you know, and just, they're exactly the same as they were, you know, in the 1940s and 1950s type thing, you know. You definitely could make this film today. Okay, last one I got is probably as people say, the greatest film ever made. I'm talking about Citizen Kane, which I've still seen once or twice before. I actually did quite enjoy it. I wouldn't necessarily, I think a lot of people probably agree, wouldn't necessarily say it's the best film ever made now. It's probably perhaps a bit outdated, I guess, in some respects. Essentially, it's about, so it's perhaps, you know, Great Expectations, I suppose. You know, Citizen Kane is a child. He's with his poor family, and some rich man comes along and sort of takes him away to be rich and, you know, to look after him type thing. It's just essentially about, you know, Citizen Kane and his life and how he sort of used to own all these newspapers and how he used to run the newspapers, and about his two wives, and how he was, you know, just, you know, what happens to his ships through, you know, he's like a politician for a while, and that had to sort of end because he got sort of found out with a mistress, and so no one sort of voted for him, and but just great sort of, I don't know, great sort of story, I guess, about a man and his life and what sort of happened to him. You know, how he's a very rich man, but in the end he was just really miserable and unhappy, and he sort of died an unhappy man. And he also had, like, his final words were Rosebud, and of course we sort of spend most of the film, you know, they're sort of following a reporter, and he's the one, he's trying to sort of find out what Rosebud is, you know, who was Rosebud, etc., etc. So, but yeah, I definitely thought it was a good sort of movie. Okay, so yeah, it's just a few sort of black and white movies that I've been watching recently. Sort of got a pretty cheap off eBay recently. Well, at least the Blu-rays anyway. You know, thanks for watching. I'll make some comments. That'd be great. And I'll probably see you probably early next month, perhaps in a few weeks' time. I'll do some more talking about movies. So yeah, okay.